Leading up to the release of Godzilla Minus One in Japanese theaters, Toho celebrated by having the film's director, Takashi Yamazaki, select 4 Godzilla films to be re-released in theaters. One of his selections was Shin Godzilla. The 2016 reboot to Godzilla dominated the Japanese film industry, sweeping the awards season and going on to represent Toho's Godzilla for over half a decade. Maybe due to its proximity to the film's original release, maybe due to Toho wanting to test the waters before releasing Godzilla Minus One Minus Color, or maybe just out of artistic value, Shin Godzilla's directors Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi worked with Katsuro Onoe to produce a new version of their iconic film. This was Shin Gojira Ortho, or Shin Godzilla Orthochromatic. Orthochromatic is a very special type of film stock that renders images in black and white using a special process that values blues and reds differently. Rather than just desaturating an image or boosting the contrast, this type of film selectively changes colors into different gray values, adding a new type of contrast to the image overall. Basically, blues are lighter and less contrasted while reds are darker and more intense. Unlike the intense process that went into Godzilla Minus One Minus Color, it's unknown how much work was actually put into Shin Godzilla Ortho. It's very possible this film was created with a specific orthochromatic LUT that was applied to the entire film, rather than having one that was adjusted for every single shot individually, the way Minus Color was created. That's seen best as Godzilla arrives in Tokyo, when the contrast levels and the amount of noise jump from shot to shot. This version of the film doesn't change anything about the original in any way, other than the color grade. Shin Godzilla is an absolute masterpiece and might be the best modernization that could be told with the Godzilla character. It perfectly updates Godzilla's core themes and ideas to today, changing him from an allegory about the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to an allegory for the 3/11 disaster, which rocked Japan and proved the government was not as ready to protect its people as it needed to be. Still retaining the core nuclear traits of Godzilla, but fitting them to the Fukushima meltdown, Shin Godzilla became a relatable story for the world we currently live in. It heavily satirizes the governments of the world with a focus on Japan and the US, and it became Toho's definitive Godzilla for a small time for good reason. The movie is well written, shot, edited, scored, and crafted. Shin Godzilla Orthochromatic retains everything that made this film great but alters its aesthetic. So much of the original film's DNA was in the brown and greenish color grading. So much of the horror was communicated through the reds inside Godzilla or the purple beam, which he would admit. By taking this and translating it to black and white, a lot of the film's DNA has been changed. It became very obvious really early into this film that this does not have the level of quality behind Godzilla Minus Color. While that film was very specifically translated to black and white to preserve the footage from being over or underexposed, large portions of this movie have those exact issues. There are so many shots throughout this entire film, whether in boardrooms or outside, that windows or the sky are so overexposed that the background is blasting whites across the screen, drowning out enormous chunks of the frame. This is especially noticeable on TVs, where for some reason the film appears even more black and white than this digital copy I'm working from. The digital copy has a slight greenish tint to it. Because the film was originally shot for color, there are often times where making the image black and white loses key qualities of the original shot that helped them to work in the first place. For instance, there are many times where the core characters fall into the background or are lost in crowded shots because they have been desaturated and they no longer stand out. Some shots, like the subtle recharging of Godzilla's internal energy, are completely undone by this filter. The only way you could tell that something is happening in this shot is because you are already familiar with the original film, despite this being a crucial plot point. When Godzilla Minus One was turned into Godzilla Minus Color, the film gained a simplicity and elegance that helped the textures and emotions shine through even stronger than before. If black and white is the beautiful art of reduction, then there must first be something to reduce. But Shin Godzilla is already a clean film without the grit that black and white helps pop. There are no textures to emphasize. Everyone's clothes are neatly pressed and maintained. Their skin is clean. The characters aren't wandering around post-war Japan. They're walking around office buildings. The environments gain nothing by losing the color. The use of color in Shin Godzilla was very deliberate and intentional. The movie was already fairly desaturated with a strong brown palette. This means that some shots look very similar even in the orthochromatic version, and this is made worse with the digital rip that makes things look even greener than they did on my TV, resulting in it looking even more like the original. Certain colors were used in Shin Godzilla to add emphasis to characters, making them stand out against others, highlighting their differences and why they were chosen to be part of Higuchi's team of misfits who would fight against the bureaucracy. This can be seen no better than with the pink towel guy, Hazama. In the orthochromatic version, this character loses his most striking feature and sinks into the background, as does the men who dress in blue jumpsuits, showing how out out of place they are in a room full of politicians in suits and ties. It doesn't stop there, as Kyoko's outfits lose their stark contrast to the more traditional political system she finds herself in. The most striking examples of color in the original movie are seen with Godzilla himself. The main color palette for the film favors dull or neutral colors, coming across as a beige and somber world that is deeply rooted in our own reality. Godzilla breaks this trend by appearing nearly alien, aided by his vibrant colors. His second form is a striking olive color, with a red back making him pop on screen. These olive colors do fit the rest of the world fairly well, almost symbolizing how he isn't too out of place or destructive just yet. Then he reaches his third form, which is almost completely red, making him incredibly out of place in the rest of the world. Once Godzilla reaches his final form, he's a crisp black with deep glowing red highlights showing how dangerous he is. The red always draws your attention as a viewer and makes Godzilla feel impossible to ignore, especially on his tail. When Godzilla charges up and his spines glow purple, the color seems so foreign to the rest of the film that it appears almost alien in nature. It elevates Godzilla to mythical status, as he's the only one in the movie to achieve this royal color, which he then weaponizes against everyone around him. It's an incredible use of color. The sense of royalty and the alien-like nature of the atomic breath are lost in this black and white iteration. That's not to say nothing is gained through this version of the movie. Black and white has a tendency to make even the simplest of things more dramatic, and this movie is no exception. Shin Godzilla was intentionally not a very emotional movie, so the use of black and white actually helps to add some feeling back into the film that it didn't have before. This film is very impassionate, but the blacks and whites help to elevate the brief moments of human emotion seen in the film, specifically in the second half. In fact, the use of the orthochromatic filter in this film works much better in the second half of the movie overall. The back half of Shin Godzilla has harsher contrasts and less lighting that becomes overexposed in this version. It's also in the back half that the characters lose some of their pristine looks. Higuchi gets a head injury and is covered in dirt at times. Suits are traded out for tactical uniforms. It complements the black and white much more. The best sequence in this version of the movie kicks off during the defeat is no option scene. While this sequence was already amazing, this gave way to the only sequence in the entire film where Godzilla appears scarier than he does in the colored version. Many have said that Shin Godzilla is like a horror movie, saying it was the closest thing we had to the 1954 Godzilla film since that film's release. And while I disagree with both of those claims, I don't deny the horror elements of the original film. But lots of those horror elements came directly from the use of the color red, either in Godzilla's blood or in his body. Initially, it seemed that element was lost in the orthochromatic version. That was before the defeat sequence kicks in. Black and white scenes always look best when they're set at night, and this plays into that so much. Godzilla now fades into the darkness, revealed primarily through his glowing nuclear core. The red bits inside Godzilla are now pure beams of white and make him feel godly and celestial. This carries over into the emergency lights on tops of all the buildings, which now beacon warnings as Godzilla arrives in the city. The atomic breath sequence loses the royal horror that it had and trades it in for a divine fury as Godzilla's beam slices through the darkness. It was so bright that it made me wince while watching the movie on a big TV at night with the lights out. It is so powerful. The wall of flames behind Godzilla as he powers down now comes across as Godzilla tearing through reality itself. The impact continues in the aftermath sequence as, for the first time in the film, the textures are allowed to take center stage. The entire sequence comes across as more dramatic and horrifying. While I do miss the purple, this was quite the spectacle. All the scenes where Godzilla appears in the darkness are even more incredible, with Godzilla glowing through the darkness the way he does in this version of the film. And overall, the entire movie has a more dreamlike quality. The overexposure plays into this during dialogue scenes, and the Tokyo attack sequence with Godzilla adds to that feeling heavily. The best part of the entire orthochromatic version captures that the best, and that's the final moments of the movie. Godzilla's frozen corpse is revealed, his tail splitting off into humanoid monsters. It's one of the most horrific and impactful endings I've ever seen. This version of the movie amplifies that by drowning out the background in whites and making the silhouette even stronger. It feels more disturbing and unnerving in black and white, coming across as even more foreign and otherworldly. This was another moment where I found myself wincing in the dark watching this movie. It was great. The Shin Godzilla orthochromatic version was a pretty neat way to watch one of the best Godzilla films ever made, but it wasn't as resonant as Godzilla Minus Color was. By taking Godzilla Minus One and translating it so carefully to black and white, the film gained so much. The emotions were amplified, the textures really shined. The film felt more complete and connected to the original Godzilla, which it is a far closer relative to than Shin Godzilla is. viewings. Most importantly, the film gained a certain historical association and context that made it feel more real and heartbreaking. Because the film is a period piece, making it black and white connects viewers back to the setting of the film even more directly. Most people remember World War II in black and white because that's the only way they've experienced it. By making Godzilla Minus One black and white, the same effect is achieved. Shin Godzilla, on the other hand, is the definitive modern solo Godzilla story for today's world. It isn't a period piece, and it wasn't trying to replicate the themes and tone of the original film. Shin Godzilla updated Godzilla's plot, meaning, symbolism, and purpose to contemporary problems and events. We remember 311 in color because that's how we experienced it. So much of what made the visuals in the original movie was the way it accurately captured the visuals of that tragic event. Lots of that meaning and association is lost in the orthochromatic version. While minus color helped Godzilla Minus One feel like the definitive Godzilla movie, orthochromatic does not make you feel like you're experiencing the definitive version of Shin Godzilla. I really enjoyed this film and would recommend it to hardcore Godzilla fans and cinema snobs, but I wouldn't recommend this to people who haven't seen Shin Godzilla or who are looking to rewatch the movie casually. While the Tokyo attack sequence has been elevated and feels more horrifying, the rest of the movie loses what made it so scary, and the film distances itself from the events it's based on, which is what so much of the meaning was derived from in the first place. I'm not rating Shin Godzilla as a film here. I think the movie's fantastic and definitely could be a 10 out of 10. I'm rating Shin Godzilla Orthochromatic as an experience, which I would give a nice 7 out of 10. It's still a fantastic film, and some sequences are just as cool as they were in the original, but in new and exciting ways, making it feel fresh, but the original film still remains the king. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you to all of the patrons who support this channel using the Patreon linked in the description below. That's the most direct way to support this channel and to make sure that I can continue to make videos like this for you. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.